Good to see everybody this evening. I want us to think about this evening what makes a church strong. Well, glad to see you, Shelby. What makes a church strong? There's been a whole lot has been said and written on what makes a strong congregation of the Lord's church. I want us to look at some things that are not found. Things that are not found in a strong congregation. First of all, the first thing that comes to my mind is the strength of the church is not found in physical facilities. A strong congregation of the Lord's body existed before fine church buildings. They met in caves and wherever they could. We're grateful for this building, aren't we? We are truly grateful for the building that we have here. We're grateful for our blessings for this building that they're able to meet in, and our hope is for the future. But we always remember that we never want to be in the same condition as Israel was in. In Hosea chapter 8 and verse 14, we never want to get in this condition. Hosea chapter 8 and verse 14. For Israel has forgotten his Maker and built palaces, and Judah has multiplied fortified cities. But I will send a fire on its cities, that it may consume its palatal, which is palace furniture, the inside, and then he goes on to say dwellings. So a strong congregation of the Lord's body is not decided by how great a building is, but we are thankful that we have this building. Next is strong churches is not in the academic degrees that people have, educated, high in degrees. Today's educational level in the church is probably at an all-time high. Everybody's been a teacher, or wanted to be a teacher, or have been a teacher, and that's wonderful. Today, education level is at an all-time high in the church, but our knowledge of science and math and communication and advancements in medicine and all those areas of life we want to keep up with, but they're moving at an incredible rate of speed, aren't they? They're just moving on with a pace of all these changes. Today's fourth grader, for an example, today's fourth grader has more education than I had in the fourth grade. And they were working algebra. I never even had algebra in high school. So, it's just the way it changes. But this doesn't mean that the church is strong, having all the education and all the developments and all the things that we acknowledge ourselves physically in this life of science and math and communication and degrees and all of that. This doesn't mean that the church is strongest. Because it's not how much education we have, is it? Physical, worldly education. It's or how many degrees we have in worldly education. But we can even have all of these degrees, and you know what we can be? We can be still foolish. We can still be spiritually, we can be foolish, we can be ignorant, spiritual-wise. The church doesn't rest on intellectual attainment in this world. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, beginning at verse 25. Because the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. For consider your calling, brethren, talking to us, that there were not many wise according to the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble. But God has chosen the foolish things of the world to shame the wise, and God has chosen the weak things of the world to shame the things which are strong. The base things of the world and the despised God has chosen, the things that are not so that he may nullify the things that are, so that no man may boast before God. But by his doing you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, so that just as it is written, let him who boasts boast in the Lord. You see things right off for a Christian. Jesus Christ, he became the wisdom from God. Righteousness, we're made righteous because we obeyed his gospel, and we have had our sins washed away. We're sanctified, he talks about. We're set apart for God's purpose. In other words, he says redemption. We have been redeemed. Redeemed by the blood of the cross. So a strong church is also not in large numbers. That seems hard to believe sometimes. You think, oh boy, if we just had all these people, all these numbers. But that's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true that a strong congregation of the Lord's church does not depend on numbers. We're conditioned with this idea, aren't we? As humans, we're conditioned with it. We hear politicians holler, our strength is in numbers, and labor unions are successful because they have large numbers, and we protest when we protest anything, or we want to change a law. We need the numbers of people to be against something so it can be effective. So we're programmed that way, to think of it that way, that success is in large numbers. We've been conditioned to think this way. We associate value with numbers. With spiritual matters, it becomes our attitude sometimes. Sometimes we say to ourselves, if only we had large numbers, we could achieve great things. When those numbers are achieved, many congregations turn into something else. They turn into a fun church. They get all the numbers, and they get all the people, and they turn into a fun church, and they have a lot of things going on except for spiritual strength. I've seen it. You've seen it. One of the most fondest memories for Beverly and I, when we were in the Army, we attended this congregation. There were 7 of us. 7 of us. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it ever. It's such a wonderful experience with those other 6 people. It was 7 of us. But it was a wonderful experience that I'll never forget ever. This is off the subject, but the preacher had a baby. And that baby, she would, the baby's mother, the preacher's wife, would carry a big jar of honey in a pacifier, and if he started acting up, she'd dunk that pacifier in that honey and stick it in his mouth. And today I wonder, what he looks like. I wonder, I wonder if he's about 400 pounds. I don't know. He's probably not. He's probably 6'5" and 200. I don't know. But the feeling that we had, I learned more, believe it or not. Had to. We get caught up in that idea, and sometimes it'll consume us that we need numbers. By measure, our success is by crowds, and that's not necessarily true. Listen, the truth is, the strength of God's people, you and I, it has never been, nor will it ever be, based on numbers. Have you ever wondered why? Have you ever just sat down and thought, I wonder why a mark of a good congregation is not numbers? It never has been. It never will be. And I've thought about it for years. And why is it not based on numbers? And I've thought about it. You know why? Because God's people are always outnumbered. We're always outnumbered. If we had 5,000 people in this building, if you could possibly get that many, we'd still be outnumbered, wouldn't we? We're always outnumbered. God's people are outnumbered. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 and 14, that Jesus tells us why. Why we're outnumbered? He says, enter through the narrow gate. For the gate is wide and the way broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small, and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. That's scary, isn't it? There are few who find it. If numbers was the main indication, then, like the religious world, then all our efforts, like the religious world, you know what that would be driven by? It'd be driven by gimmicks, gadgets, gizmos, trips to the ocean, Disneyland, bingo nights, raffles, and garage sales, all to raise money for whatever reason. That's how the religious world goes. All the large numbers that people would come. Instead, you know what we depend on? We depend on God. We depend on the truth of God and His Word. We could even, and some congregations have, watered down the truth. If we watered down the truth, we could do that, and we'd have plenty of people. We would get all kinds of people if we decided that's what we maybe needed to do, is compromise the truth. And then they would keep coming. They'd start coming for sure, because they didn't hear the truth. But what would be the result? Boy, there shouldn't be any doubt, is there? There shouldn't be any doubt what the result would be. We would lose our souls. Jesus Christ would spew us out of His mouth. Strength of the church is not in material riches either. This is not the measure of success. There's some congregations that have these huge budgets, and they're some of the poorest ones spiritually. Big budgets doesn't mean you have a strong congregation. It just doesn't. That's not an indicator of a strong congregation, is to have this enormous budget. There's a church that we read about that thought they were rich, the church of Laodicea. But you know what they were? They were strong and they were rich materially, but they were poor spiritually. Revelation chapter 3 and verse 17. Because you say, I am rich, and have become wealthy, and have need of nothing, you do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. They thought they were rich, and that was all there was to it. Church of Smyrna, they were poor spiritually. Revelations 2 and verse 9, the church at Smyrna, they were poor materially, but boy, they were rich spiritually. In Revelation 2 and verse 9, he says, I know your tribulation, your poverty, but you're rich. You're rich. And why are you rich? You're rich spiritually. Rich spiritually. And the blasphemy by those who say they are Jews, but they're not, but are a synagogue of Satan, he says. Money can be a great blessing, can it? I mean, it can. There's no doubt. Money can be a great blessing if it's used for the glory of God. That's how it has to be used, to glorify Him. And money that we have must be used for God's glory. It belongs to Him anyway. But it's not the measure of success. It's not the standard that's used by God to have money. The strength of the church, and this one, you may throw a tomato at me on this one. The strength of the church is not community image. Don't get me wrong. It is vital that you and I have a good image. It's vital that you and I have the image of Jesus Christ. That people see Jesus Christ in our lives, and they see Jesus Christ in our actions. And that's the image we want to portray. I've known congregations that felt that because they were socially elite, you know what I'm trying to say? They were socially elite, and they were more affluent and they were more wealthy and than all the leaders in the community, and they thought that made them stronger as a congregation. But listen, that's not so. It's just not so. Beverly and I attended this congregation. You know, you get around like we did, and you visited a lot, and you were members of a lot of congregations. And she and I attended this congregation for 8 years. It was nowhere in this area. I'll say, don't get that. It was nowhere near here. It wasn't even in the same state. But we attended a congregation out of state. No one, I want you to, I don't know how to say this. No one in that congregation had an opportunity to do anything. No one had the opportunity to teach a class. No one had an opportunity to be considered as a deacon or an elder. The only thing you could be sure of getting, if you really wanted it, you could sure get that. And that's driving the bus or being a bus captain. You could get that job just like that. In fact, they would ask you, you want to do that? Would you like to do that? That same congregation, and I'm going to try to explain this, how I felt about this. We had an elder, and we had a couple that visited us. And he was, I think he was a doctor. Wasn't he a doctor? And she was a principal or something. I mean, boy, they had it going on, you know. They did. They had it going on. And they were a very nice couple. I liked them. And very good Christian people. But when they weren't there, they were just visited, and then they didn't come back. And that elder, and I don't want to misquote him or nothing like that, but he stood up and he encouraged every one of us. Every one of us. Oh, this guy, he's a doctor. Oh, and his wife's a principal. Oh, we need them. We need them. See, that's what they were always looking for. They didn't need nobody like me. They didn't need me. Unless I wanted to drive the bus, I could do that. They were encouraging us. Boy, if they come in, I want y'all to swamp them back there. Get back there with them. Get to know them. Let them know how much you appreciate them and you want them to be members here in this congregation. Well, how do you think I felt about that? How do you think she felt about that? How do you think you would feel about that? How about, boy, you need to meet them people. They're great Christians. They love the Lord. I don't have any idea what they do for a living. It doesn't really matter. But they love the God. And they love Jesus Christ. And we need them. Wouldn't that go over a whole lot better? It just would. It would for me. I'll just say that. And this was that same congregation. That's all he had to say. But that's what was not what was important to him. What was important to him is what he said to us. I had another congregation. We got a lot of them, don't we? Had another congregation that if you wanted to be a teacher, you wanted to teach a Bible class, you wanted to teach kids, you wanted to be any kind of teacher. If you weren't a college professor or a medical doctor or a business owner or a judge or a real estate tycoon or a school teacher, you can forget it. Is that right? Is that the right attitude? I know you look for someone who can teach. I understand that. And a school teacher, you picked Liz. I'd pick Liz. I know she can teach a Bible class, but I know her background too. She's a teacher. My grandson loved her. He loved her. I don't know how she felt about him. She may have been mad at him all the time. I don't know. But that was the only way. A person with, like me, average ability would never have the opportunity to be involved. And so the message here is if you want to teach a class, you men, jump up there. I'll teach a class. Let me teach a class. I'll take a quarter. Jump up there. Step forward. It's open for you. If we had kids, if we had teenagers, you ladies with the kids, just jump on it. But this congregation, you would never have the opportunity, and I wasn't happy. Not because I thought, man, you need to make me a teacher. It wasn't that. It's just I needed it. You know what I mean? I need to felt like I needed to do something for God. So it affected their image of that community. It didn't help a bit. Because it was the true indicator of how strong and faithful a congregation they were. In fact, we've been to some congregations, and this is the truth. It would never happen here, I can tell you that. We attended a large congregation. Nobody said a word to us when we came in. Not one word. Nothing. No, not one word. They didn't tell us where classes were located. This is where this class is, and this. You take your kids over here. We had little kids, and they wouldn't do that. So what we do, we just wandered around looking at the walls and trying to figure out where to go. And it should not be that way. We just wandered around. There was a cold, hard feeling there. They may have thought they were strong, but listen, they gave a terrible impression. They just did. Isn't it interesting that in the early church, they were never stronger as a congregation and as members? They were never stronger, and except when they were persecuted. When they were persecuted, or when they were spoken against or ridiculed, the church was never stronger. It grew by leaps and bounds. You know why? Because they were teaching the truth. Teaching the truth. They knew the truth was real. They knew it was real. And sometimes I worry that there are some Christians, to them it's just a fairy tale. Like you'd tell a fairy tale instead of the truth. They knew the truth was real. They knew it, Wayne. They knew it. We need to know it. There is nothing more valuable than being the blood-bought institution of the Lord, is there? Nothing more valuable. And I'm so thankful we have that here. I'm so thankful that a visitor can't walk in here. Well, you know, there's not very many of us. We know automatically if it's a visitor. But we go to them. We love them. The early Christians were willing to face anything they had to. Stand for anything. Stand for the faith if they had to. They were willing to stand and face up against anything as long as they knew they had to stand for the truth, and the truth was worth everything that it cost them. We have to know that too. We have to stand for the truth. We have to be faithful in our life, and we have to be ready to stand and defend the faith. We have to tell others of the good news. We have to be ready to tell everybody the hope that we have within us. And reputation will take care of itself. I am so thankful that maybe it's because you overlook me sometimes, but I am so thankful that this congregation teaches the truth. I am so thankful that this congregation worships in spirit and in truth. I know you are. And you know what that is? More important, you know what that is? I've heard it from Darwin before. When you worship in spirit and truth, and you teach the truth, Darwin, I've heard him say, what this is being acceptable in the sight of the Lord, not the world. Being acceptable in His sight. So I think that I'll end this by just saying, thank you for being you. Thank you for being you. Thank you for allowing me to do this. It's really been a blessing to be with y'all. And it'll always be a blessing to be with y'all. And when you ever hire somebody else, I'm not going anywhere. I may go to the back row with Beverly, but we ain't going nowhere. So I think the question we have to ask ourselves, and we have to be honest to ourselves, are we strong in the faith? What kind of a reputation do we have in the community? Is it that they know their Bible? Do you remember in the 60s? Boy, I used to eat Beverly up like that. Well, I just eat her up about the church. But you know what I'd always wind up saying? Boy, those people, I'll say one thing, those people know their Bible. Can they say that about us today? Are we standing firm in the faith that no matter what happens in this world, no matter what happens, we have strong faith in God to take care of us, that everything's going to be okay. And our faith is in Him is worth any price that we have to pay. Any price. To be in Him. If we need to make corrections, need to make them. Need to make them. So that's all I have tonight. I hope that we learned something. I don't know if we did. I did in preparing it. If we can help in any way, why don't you come?